Okay, so that looks delicious. We're gonna move on to the next recipe. Again, going with that theme that Stephanie talked about and supporting the immune system. And we're gonna make this beautiful stuffed butternut squash dish. Steph, I'll let you lead it off.
Yeah, no. So, we have butternut squash. So, butternut squash has that beautiful orange color, right? And this comes, and you get that from vitamin A, vitamin C, right? There's lots of those nutrients in butternut squash. And I just want to, remind and restate that, not one nutrient is going to be the end all of all nutrients to help, but that, nutrition does play a role in protecting ourselves from inflammation, other health problems. So we know that there's so many different foods and nutrients that are part of a healthy immune system. So vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, proteins, these are things that, we want to include in our meals. So, you have vitamin A. It protects against infection by keeping the skin and tissues in the mouth, stomach, intestine healthy. And you can get these things from things like sweet potatoes, squash, carrots, broccoli, red peppers, apricots, eggs. All right. And then you also have some vitamin C, right? And also helps formation of those antibodies. So including things from food rather than pill supplements is always a good thing. I always am advocating for that. And vitamin C, you get that from oranges, tangerines, also peppers, papaya. So anything, strawberries, tomato juice, and definitely some cereals. So these are two ones that I wanted to highlight for this specific recipe. And, we are in winter season, so having those heartier vegetables, I know for me, I always love that. So let us know, Jer, how to make more of like a fun roasted butternut squash.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love, trying different recipes and playing with some of those colors and those vegetables, especially during the holidays, because you probably have your traditional dishes, but it's nice sometimes to highlight, maybe something new, something else. So this, I think, would be a showstopper on the dinner table. But what I love about this recipe is this works really well the next day or the next couple days, utilizing some of those leftovers from the holiday meal. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the stuffing. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down here to our cutting board. And for this stuffing, again, probably not your traditional bread stuffing, but what I want to do is use some of those vegetables that are going to bring a ton of flavor to our dish. Okay, so I have some, these are shallots, but you can use any onion if you have. And I have some mushrooms here as well. Any mushrooms will do. This is going to bring a lot of that savoriness, that umami to the dish. And then some garlic. There's a ton of garlic in the last one, so we might as well continue that streak and just keep pushing the garlic here. And what I'm going to do is get that sauteing in my pan. Okay, so I've got my pan here, and I've got it over about medium-high heat. Okay, so I don't want to fuss around with this too much. I want to get a lot of color pretty quickly, soften it up a little bit, but I'm not doing any slow cooking. I just want to brown these vegetables. And with the mushrooms, and so I'll add my garlic, I'll add my onions. And then with the mushrooms, I'm just going to roughly chop them. So I'll take them here, my cutting board, and you can roughly chop them or give them like a little slice. The smaller that you cut them, the faster that they're going to brown and the faster that they're going to cook. With mushrooms, they have a lot of water. They're mostly water. So we want that water to evaporate as quickly as possible. The quicker the water evaporates, the quicker we start to get that color, that browning, and that is all flavor. Okay. There was a question that came in. What is the green stuff? Oh, I will show you in a second. So we're going to add the rest of our mushrooms here to the pan. And I got a nice hot pan. And I used a little bit of grapeseed oil. So Steph mentioned in the last one that when we're cooking with oils, we want to choose an oil that does have a higher smoke point. And that means that we can use a little bit more heat and prevent it from smoking or burning. We don't want our oil to burn. So oils that have a higher smoke point are canola oil is great to use. Avocado oil is great to use. I like using grapeseed oil because, again, high smoke point and very neutral flavor. So those are really good ones to use. Because I'm using a high heat, I want to try to use one of those high smoke point oils, okay? So I have my mushrooms in here. I've got my garlic and the green stuff. So this is where a lot of the flavor comes from. These are some herbs, okay? Any herbs will work for this. I've got a little bit of rosemary, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of sage. If you have parsley, use parsley. If you have some dried herbs, use dried herbs. Whatever you like. For that more Christmassy holiday stuffing flavor, usually you would see these three: thyme, sage, and rosemary. So if you want to get some of those traditional flavors, then stay in this realm. But otherwise, any herbs will work, okay? So with these, almost like Jennifer did with the kale, with the rosemary, I'm going to do the same thing. It's just a little bit smaller, but sort of pinch the stem, and then with your other finger, just rip those little pines of rosemary off. And then I can do the same with my thyme, okay? And just rip them off. The thyme is a little bit smaller. So what you can do with the thyme as well is if you find it a little difficult taking all those little herbs, removing the herbs from the sprig, then you could just throw it in whole and then remove it afterwards. Okay, so I'll give this just a rough chop. I'm going to add that to the pan with the mushrooms and the onion and the garlic. And again, once those herbs hit those mushrooms and that fat, it's going to fill up the kitchen with this beautiful aroma, okay? So we have our flavor. We have our mushrooms. Now we're going to move on to another very festive ingredient. And again, this is great if you have, leftover nuts, maybe walnuts or pecans or chestnuts. I don't know if you do traditionally roast chestnuts. We love roasting chestnuts in the house, and this is the season that you'll find them. So you'll see these in the grocery store. These I roasted this morning. If you don't know how to roast chestnuts, I will send a link in the chat box in a little bit for another recipe, but it's really, really easy. But if you don't want to roast your own, you can buy them pre-roasted. They come in those little vac packs, usually like $2-3, and those are great to use as well.
Yeah. Again, just one note about the nuts. So zinc is an important nutrient because it helps the immune system work properly, and they help wounds heal. Okay, so zinc could be found in a number of different types of foods, such as lean meats, poultry, seafood, milk, whole grains, and also beans, seeds, and nuts. And one of them being chestnut. So by including some of those meat, like Jeremy said, you could use any type of nut and seed, but because they all have some zinc, and chestnuts do have 5% of your daily value. So that's awesome for 100 grams.
Beautiful. So I'm just like tearing these up roughly with my hands. You can definitely use a knife, and that's going to go in with the mushrooms, and the onions, and everything else in there. And
oops, sorry, it wasn't 100 grams. It's 1 ounce. So that's about 2 tablespoons. So not that much.
All right, so quick stir here, and you can see I'm already starting to get a little bit of color. If I add a little pinch of salt, which I'm going to do now, that's also going to help to bring out some of the moisture and help with the browning. Okay, next ingredients, we're going to add some more green stuff. So these are Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts that you can take whole, wash them up. I take maybe the outer leaf off, and then just slice against the leaves to get these little nice shreds. Okay, now if you don't have Brussels sprouts, you can definitely use kale, like we used in the first recipe. Kale would be beautiful. Or, you know, what if you have some leftover sauteed cabbage? That would work as well. Okay, so again, use what you have.
Yeah. And I love that. You know, we always talk about making sure that, you know, you have those rich colors in your diet and coming from different vegetables. So we've got that check for the bright orange from the squash, but also, you know, getting some sort of green leafy vegetable, whether that's coming from kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, right? These are high in folate, which again is also part of a healthy immune system.
Now, for more of the starchy ingredients that you would typically see in stuffing, you usually see bread, obviously like a stale bread or a dry bread that's torn in. You can absolutely do that here. Or if you want to change it up a little bit, use, you know, a nice whole grain. If you had some leftover quinoa that you made, let's say for the Caesar salad in the first recipe, that would be delicious in here. Or if you had a quick cooking whole grain like whole wheat couscous or bulgur, that would be fantastic. And then if you have leftover bread, you can use that as well. The idea is, again, use what you have. So here I had some bulgur and quinoa that was left over. Even rice would be great in here. Again, just as long as it's cooked. And I'm going to add about a cup or so. Again, not really measuring much. Just add about a cup, a few spoons in there. And we'll give that a quick stir. And this should be pretty quick. So this should be done in under 10 minutes for the stuffing, because we're going to finish it in the oven. Okay, some beautiful color there. And then the last thing was we're going to add some of that citrus, right? Some of that vitamin C.
Getting that vitamin C, yeah.
So this is a clementine, but you can add orange, tangerine. Again, winter is the season for citrus. You wouldn't think that because it's cold and, you know, citrus comes from more tropical areas, but the winter is the best time to get citrus. That's where you're going to see like blood oranges and different varieties of orange. And so we're going to squeeze that into our stuffing.
And the other thing to note with citrus is that because it's high in vitamin C, it helps absorb iron in the body. So if you're, you know, using animal-based foods, that's better and more efficiently absorbed in your body. However, if you're, you know, getting your proteins from plant-based mostly, then you do want to make sure that you're combining the vitamin C with that iron-based food and eating it together. So quinoa is one of our popular grains, and it does contain iron. So, you know, pairing that with a vitamin C-rich food is going to help absorb that iron into your body even more efficiently.
Beautiful. Okay, so you can see the stuffing. Looks great. I'm just going to leave it on there for a couple more minutes, but otherwise it's done. It's really, really easy. I don't want to cook it into a mush or make it too soft. Just want to get some nice color and caramelization on there. So that's the stuffing. Now for the squash. Simplest way to do the squash, and this is my favorite way to do it, is whole. Just wash it and then put it into the oven on a baking tray. And we're going to bake it only about 3/4 of the way through, so not fully baked. So at 400 degrees, I'm going to go for probably 40 minutes, 45 minutes, just until it starts to get soft, okay? And again, this is the first thing you can do. So this I did ahead of time. So you can see, again, I didn't do anything. No seasoning, no salt, no olive oil. Didn't even take out my knife. Just wash it, put it onto a baking tray, into the oven for about 40 minutes, just until it starts to get soft. I don't want to cook this too much. Otherwise, it's not going to hold its shape, and it's going to sort of get a little mushy. So just about 3/4 of the way through. And what I'm going to do is just take the stem off. just to make it easier to cut. And then I'll run my knife. Steph, you guys can see this, right?
Yeah, looks great.
I'm going to run my knife just down the middle. You can see how much easier this is to cut. So especially for harder vegetables like sweet potato, squash, rutabaga, you know, if you don't feel comfortable with your knife, or if it's just too much work, and it can be a lot of work, it can be, you know, very strange.
It takes so much time.
Use the oven as a tool, make it soft. I could cut this with a butter knife. It's beautiful, okay? So there we go, butternut squash. I'm gonna take out a spoon, and I'm gonna scoop out the seeds of the inside. All right, I guess you can try to roast those up if you want, but I'm not gonna bother today. And so I could feel that it is soft enough for me to scoop with a spoon, but it still has some texture to it. It's not fully mush or falling apart, okay? So I'm gonna get my spoon now. I've scooped out a little cavity with where the seeds were, and I'm gonna get my spoon out and just carve like a little channel, okay? Not too deep, maybe about like ½ inch thick, okay? But a little area for me to put my stuffing, okay? And anything that I sort of scoop out, I can add to my stuffing, and that way it goes back in, okay? And the same thing with the other squash. We're gonna scoop a little channel down the middle, like that. Add it to the stuffing, okay? And then we'll bring the stuffing back. So this is done. Stir it up, and we're gonna put the stuffing in here into the channel, okay? And like I said, we use some mushrooms, we use some onion, Brussels sprouts, but if you're making this the day after Christmas or whatever, you know, during your celebration, you can put leftovers, right? Put leftover cooked cabbage or Brussels sprouts. If you want to put leftover turkey or chicken, you know, you can throw that in here as well. Definitely make it easy.
Yeah, it's always a great idea to figure out ways to reuse those leftovers to make it easier on yourself. I mean, you might enjoy just having, you know, the turkey or whatever, the stuffing in the same way for a few days afterwards, but repurposing that in different ways, like, you know, putting turkey in a sandwich or using the stuffing on the squash is really exciting and fun ways to use it.
Okay, so the squash has been stuffed. I'm going to throw this onto.
Delicious.
And you can even top it with, I guess you can even throw some cheese on there if you want, but this is really tasty as is. I'm going to add just a small little drizzle of olive oil on top here. And this is going to help with the browning. And then I'll put it back into my oven, 400 degrees, for about 15-20 minutes, just so that the squash can cook all the way through. And then you're going to get some really, really nice browning and color on top. So that goes in. Magic oven. Squash comes out. And there we have it. Some beautiful caramelized stuffed squash, just ready to plate. And like I said, this is so tasty and can be such a showstopper for the table on its own. If you're not doing a turkey, forget the turkey. You know, if it's a small gathering this year, throw one of these guys in the oven. And if you want to top it with a little gravy, so I have our mushroom gravy. This is our famous mushroom gravy on the ELLICSR Kitchen site, which I'll plug as well. And I'm just going to drizzle this mushroom gravy all over the top. And what's lovely about this is you're going to have the really nice soft squash on the bottom, but all these nice little crunchy bits with the chestnuts and the umami from the mushrooms. and a little bit of that gravy on top. Okay, maybe I put a little too much gravy. I like gravy, but there we have it.
Delicious. Yeah.
In our butternut squash.